Just this month, my bill was like $138.
Even at one phone call a week cost me $40 to $50 every month.
I am living on a fixed income of SSI, so this is really a great hardship. Families are being punished. When they incarcerate your children, they incarcerate the whole family.
In 2011, the Media Action Grassroots Network, Working Narratives, and Prison Legal News founded the Campaign for Prison Phone Justice, an effort to call on the FCC to address the cost of interstate phone calls. The campaign mobilized prisoners to send hundreds of letters. Advocates and families filled out postcards, met with elected officials, and signed petitions. Partnerships were formed across the political spectrum and with groups in the criminal justice, civil rights, and public interest community. The film distribution company Participant Media and director Ava DuVernay joined the fight through a social action campaign tied to the release of the feature film Middle of Nowhere. In an effort to push the FCC to act, the campaign hosted a historic rally outside of the Federal Communications Commission where for the first time, families of prisoners, elected officials, civil rights and faith leaders came together to call for an end to predatory phone rates.
We're all held captive when predatory phone companies gouge our families.
My son has been incarcerated now for over 10 years, and my husband estimates that in the time we spent over $25,000 on prison phone calls.
My hero's not yours, you probably arrested them. Your schools probably neglected them. They spawn thoughts, you probably infected them. Feed us what you feed us, you can lay us next to them. FBI call it major crimes. Babies making babies cry.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies. In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
Another week full of news, and this is Monday, April 27. We dive right in here after the weekend. Hope you had a good one and are ready to tackle the news of the day this whole new week here on the Bill Press Show. We are coming to you live on Free Speech TV, nationwide and worldwide on our video stream, TawkrTV, youtube.com/TawkrTV. Coming to you from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., and our studio on Capitol Hill, right in the heart of the action. Devastation around the world in Nepal, over 3,000 dead, and you know that death toll is going to rise after this horrific earthquake and series of aftershocks, each one of them equivalent to a major earthquake. Dozens of people stranded on Mount Everest. Relief worldwide from nations around the world is rushing into Nepal, but it's so far away, it's hard to get there. And meanwhile, with the rubble, they're still digging people out of the rubble with their hands. Back here in this country, Washington, D.C., White House journalists spent the entire weekend, me included, celebrating ourselves. The weekend, of course, was the weekend of the White House Correspondents' Dinner, with all the before parties and the after parties and the after parties. President Obama and Cicely Strong from Saturday Night Live putting in very strong performances at the dinner. Also, Fast Track now has passed committees, the important committees in the House and in the Senate. It will soon be up for a floor vote in both bodies. House Democrats are convinced they've got the votes to block President Obama from getting Fast Track authority. And today, Loretta Lynch will be sworn in by Vice President Joe Biden, finally, as our next Attorney General of the United States. Give us a call about any of the above. 866-55-PRESS is the toll-free number. Good to have you with us this Monday morning.
This is the Bill Press Show.
I have run these canyons for 6 million years. I have traveled from the Rocky Mountains to the deserts, through scorching heat and freezing cold, from the land of the dinosaurs to fields of food.
I lend my hand to 7 states, 2 countries, 9 national parks,
and 36 million people across an arid West.
I am not the strongest or the largest, but I am the hardest working.
People love me.
My playfulness,
My beauty,
my power,
my life. But I don't think I can offer any more.
I am tired.
I am tired,
tapped,
and tied. Of the hundreds of major rivers in the world, I am one of the few who no longer kisses the sea.
Battles to harness my soul have been won and lost. Use me wisely, and I will sustain you.
Use me like you have, and I will break. My name
is
Red. The Grand River Red. The American Nile.
The Canyon Maker. I am the Colorado River.
And I am the most endangered river in America.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
Mother Nature speaks out with vengeance in Nepal. Over 3,000 dead, and aftershocks continue. Keeping our eye on that part of the world. Hello, everybody. And a good Monday morning to you, April 27. So good to see you today. We trust you had a good weekend, had a chance to kick back, recharge your batteries, have a little fun, maybe a little party time, a little family time, and back jumping into it with both feet this morning to tackle the news of the day, both here in Washington, D.C., a busy, busy weekend in Washington, D.C. with the White House Correspondents' Dinner. News happening around the country, continuing protests up in Baltimore, although today with the funeral of Freddie Gray, his family has asked that there be no protests yesterday for the day of his wake or today, the day of his funeral. And news again from around the world, mostly from the incredible situation, horrific situation in Nepal, where the earthquake and the resulting aftershocks have just caused so much damage and cost so many lives. We'll keep you up to date on all of it as we roll through the next 3 hours here on this Monday, and look forward to hearing from you at 866-55-PRESS on what it all means to you. 866-55-77-377, or send us your comments on Twitter at BP Show and on Facebook at facebook.com/BuiltPressShow. Such an important day. We've got the entire team assembled here. Peter Ogburn and Lisa Murphy. Hello, hello.
Hello, Bill.
Hey, good morning.
With Alicia Cruz, ready to take your calls at 866-55-PRESS, and Cyprian Bolding, a videographer, on the job as well. I just want you to know I did my duty over the weekend. I want you to know, team, I did not, just kick back over the weekend. I partied my butt off over the weekend. Okay, starting Friday night with 3 parties, and then Saturday with the dinner and 2 parties after the dinner, and then Sunday with 2 brunches on Sunday. So, I just did my share. I just want you to know. Had to be out there for the team.
Very nice.
We're proud to have you in today, Bill.
You're lucky. No, you're lucky to have me in today. Yeah.
I was a little worried about it.
But the dinner was a huge success. About 3,000 people in the ballroom of the Washington Hilton. And, it's one of those things like it's interesting. There were not the huge Hollywood celebrities this year. This year was more the TV series celebrities, like from House of Cards or not. And in fact, I don't even think Kevin Spacey and Robin Wright were there. They were sort of secondary House of Cards members, and some of the other you've read about them. Some of the other shows were with people that I must admit I wouldn't even recognize. Right, So it was not all the bubble like surrounding George Clooney, for example. When he was there, but. Boy, I saw Anthony Scalia and I don't know how many different senators and cabinet members. They were all there. And I want you to know, in that entire ballroom, there were 3 labor leaders. There were 3 union presidents in the entire ballroom. Only 3 out of 3,000 people. And all 3 of them were there as guests of the Bill Press Show.
Wow.
Nice work.
Makes us proud.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Jim Hoffa, president of the Teamsters. Randy Weingarten, president of the AFT. And Tom Buffenbarger, president of the Machinists, and then Congresswoman Barbara Lee was our other guest, and they all had a good time. And President Obama, as usual, knocked it out of the park. He was in rare form. He talked about the fact. Let's start there. That he's only got 2 years left now, 1.5 years maybe. So his advisors, he was. People wanted to know if. You've got some things you want to get done before you leave, like do you have a bucket list?
After the midterm elections, my advisors asked me, Mr. President, do you have a bucket list? And I said, well, I have something that rhymes with bucket list.
It's still funny here.
Take executive action on immigration? Bucket.
The crowd got into that. He could have gone on and on and on with, yeah, they want me to have a beer with Mitch McConnell. Bucket. And he also had a very funny line about, he had funny lines about a lot of different politicians. A very funny line about Hillary and how times have changed for her.
For many Americans, this is still a time of deep uncertainty. For example, I have one friend. Just a few weeks ago, she was making millions of dollars a year, and she's now living out of a van in Iowa.
He also said that mentioned that Hillary went totally unidentified, in a Chipotle.
Oh, yeah, Chipotles.
Yeah, right. And unrecognized, and a Chipotle. And so he said, and not to be outdone, Martin O'Malley went unrecognized in a Martin O'Malley fundraiser.
That's
which was really good.
savage.
I know. It
like
was,
that.
but I like it. And finally, President Obama talked about how tough it was it's not easy being president.
Being president is never easy. I still have to fix a broken immigration system, issue veto threats, negotiate with Iran, all while finding time to pray 5 times a day.
It's busy.
Everybody got it. So that was a fun weekend, and we got lots to talk about here this morning. And we'll start out with the big battle. Talked a lot about this Saturday night with our guests over the TPP and Fast Track Authority. But first, Peter.
This is the Full Court Press.
Yes, indeed. Just a couple of other stories making news. We go to Bangor, Maine, where a Walmart worker was cleaning up outside in the parking lot, and he found a damp bag filled with $4,000 in cash.
Uh-oh.
So what do?
You turn it in.
Sucker. Well, that's what this guy did. He turned it in to the store. The store called the police. The police got a call from a man who was at a Walmart and had left the bag of money on top of his car, and then he drove off. He's the owner of a restaurant nearby, and he just forgot all about the cash on top of his car.
Yeah.
So they reunited the man with the man who found it. The guy who found the bag and turned it in, they gave him like a little police coin. I don't know how much money that's worth. They should have given him more than that, right?
Yeah.
And some free meals.
Half of the money?
Well,
yeah,
a couple of $100 anyhow.
At least, right? Anyway, he gets a reward. Congratulations.
You know, putting money on top of a car and then driving off, is the dumbest thing you can do. I've done it twice.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I'm wearing a pair of glasses today because yesterday I put my pair of glasses on top of my car so I could put my sunglasses on while the kids were riding bikes. I drove off and smashed them. So, yeah, it happens.
Yeah, I've come out of a restaurant, taken my wallet out, put it on top of the car, get in the car, drove off. Yeah.
Leave it. That's the dumbest thing you can do. Congratulations to George Kirby and Doreen Lucky, Bill. They're getting married in June.
Congratulations.
They're getting married in June. He is 102 years old, and she is 91 years old. They already have 7 kids, 15 grandkids, 7 great-grandkids. When they asked Mr. Kirby about how he proposed, he said, quote, "I didn't get down on one knee because I don't think I would have been able to get back up." Quote. So they're getting married in June, and they will be living in East Sussex in England. So congratulations.
hopefully they make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
They should have maybe bumped that up a little bit.
Yeah,
It's
right.
a long time to wait when you're 102.
Where are they going on the honeymoon? To the dining room.
Yeah, exactly.
In the nursing home.
Right.
They'll go to the dining.
Right. It's a special day. And Spotify, the music streaming giant, they think that they have pinpointed the average age of a midlife crisis. What they did is they took a look at users' listening habits and find out when you make the switch from like the hits of today to like your old stuff, the old music, right? When you go back and start listening to older stuff. And they say that age is 42. 42 before you have a midlife crisis, according to Spotify.
I don't know. I think it varies with different people. I'm still having a midlife crisis.
You've been having one for years.
I have. All right. Thank you, Peter. Yes, indeed. I'll tell you, the topic of conversation at our table at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and had dinner with a member of Congress last night and saw a lot of them over the weekend, was TPP. Not so much the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the big trade deal, but the Fast Track Authority that President Obama has asked for. And this has set up a very, I remember the battles over NAFTA. And by the way, I think the critics of NAFTA have proven to be right. NAFTA has cost this country thousands and thousands of jobs and has allowed the flight south of a lot of jobs to Mexico, maybe some to Canada, and certainly has not done anything to improve wages or to increase jobs in this country. And that is what any trade deal ought to be all about. As one of the Democrats I talked to over the weekend said, if it doesn't increase wages for American workers, and if it doesn't save American jobs or create new American jobs, why sign a trade deal? So these deals are very, very important, and this one is particularly important because a TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, would involve 12 nations all around the Pacific and make the United States let's say, a level playing field or a fair trading environment for all of these countries, including the United States. So this has become it's a very important issue, and it's a real battle. But what's interesting is that the way these sides have shaped up, because this is not President Obama and Democrats versus Republicans in Congress. This is President Obama and Republicans versus Democrats in Congress. Maybe not all Democrats, but certainly against all progressive Democrats. In the Senate, it's progressive Democrats like Amy Klobuchar, I talked to her yesterday, Sherrod Brown from Ohio, Debbie Stabenow from Michigan, Bernie Sanders from Vermont, Democrats, progressives, independents, who are all not against, and this is very important, we've talked about this before, I want to make this point again. The issue is not against a trade deal, it's against the Fast Track Authority. And in the House, the leaders against this are Rosa DeLauro, number one, Barbara Lee from California, Leader Pelosi hasn't signed on to this. You can go right down the list of progressive Democrats. Keith Ellison, basically Peter Welsh from Vermont. All the friends, Peter, our good friend from Michigan, who's often Dan
Kildee.
Dan Kildee.
Yeah, Dan Kildee.
Saw him at the dinner. So it goes on and on, all lining up against it. And again, what they're lining up against, I love your take on this too, is not that we need a trade deal. Of course we need a trade deal. We need a fair trade deal. We need a trade deal that has good environmental protections, good protections for unions, good protections for American workers, keeping jobs here, maybe bringing more jobs here. We need that kind of a fair, strong trade deal. But the question is, should the Congress first give the president what he's asking for, which is fast track authority? The way Fast Track Authority works is that the president alone can make that deal, doesn't have to show it ahead of time to members of Congress. They have absolutely no input into that deal. They have to totally trust him to make the deal and to make the best deal he can. And then only after the deal has been accepted by all 12 nations would Congress get a chance to vote, and they can only vote up or down. They can't amend it. They can't change it. They can't strengthen it. They can't even weaken it. All they can do is say, we agree or we disagree. Fast Track Authority, 866-55-PRESS. Should President Obama get it? 866-55-77-377. President Obama talked about it over the weekend. Paul Ryan talked about it over the weekend. Interestingly enough, it sounded like they were reading from the same talking points because they were basically saying the same thing. But the question I have is, and I ask you, should any president be given that much total carte blanche? Would you just hand your credit card, right, to any president and say, here, charge whatever you want on this card, and then when we get the bill, we'll either pay it or not pay it.
Right.
I mean, I as I said to one of our labor guests at the dinner Saturday night, if I were a Republican, I'd vote against this. Not just because Obama's a Democratic president. If I were a Democrat, I'd vote against it. I don't think any president should have that kind of almost dictatorial authority without any input at all from Congress. Members of Congress can't get a copy of it. Their staff can't even see it. Members of Congress are allowed to go into a room with no notes, no cell phone, no camera, no pen, no paper, no pencil, and read a 3,000-page draft and are supposed to remember enough to come out. And then they can't even tell their staff what's in it. That's how much they're kept in the dark. 866-55-PRESS is a big battle. and it really affects every American and certainly every working family. We for it or against it, Fast Track Authority? Let's talk about it.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand and they don't get it and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university?
Yeah, people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies. In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
This is the Bill Press Show.
All right, 26 minutes after the hour on TPP, President Obama and Fast Track Authority. President Obama basically is telling Democrats, trust me, I will make a good deal. I'm a Democrat. I have always fought for middle-class families. And he said, If we don't, here's the rule that he's saying. If we don't set these rules, if we're not the ones who are making and leading this deal, then China will make it. And telling Democrats, so just give me the authority and you can count on me to make a good deal. A lot of Democrats are saying, Mr. President, we love you, but trust and verify.
Yeah.
We're just not going to give you that total authority. Should they? Mark, down in Orlando, Florida. What do you say, Mark?
Hey, good morning. Hey. I'm against this thing. I mean, there ain't no way should be giving Obama this power. It takes away the system of checks and balances.
Seems to me it does. Yeah, what's it all about, right? There's got to be some role for Congress here.
Yeah, I know. Why don't we just have Ross Perot come in and talk to us about what happened with the NAFTA?
Yeah, good point.
That giant sucking sound.
That giant sucking sound. That's right. He knew what it was all about. He was right. Thanks, Mark. Donna in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Donna, for it or against it?
I'm against it. I agree with you that it's dictatorial. And I'm also wondering why all the secrecy surrounding the whole thing, the negotiations already.
Yep.
And then if Fast Track were passed, why Congress wouldn't be able to see and know more than they did.
Excellent point. I think the secrecy is a real problem. As I mentioned, the members of Congress, they are totally in the dark about what's in this. And Elizabeth Warren says that if it's so good, then let us read the damn thing. More calls coming up. TPP
is the Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. If I say dot, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you come.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan, big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
Hey, it's 34 minutes after the hour here on the Bill Press Show. This Monday, we're talking about the number one issue facing the Democrats in Congress, in the House and in the Senate. Both the relevant and appropriate committees in the House and the Senate have approved fast track authority for the president, which the president has asked for. Democrats in the House have vowed to block it. Rosa DeLauro told me the other night she is sure they've got the votes to block it. I heard that from another congressman last night I had dinner with. I remain unnamed. And Barbara Lee, who is whipping for votes against this fast track authority, told me Saturday night at the dinner that she thinks they're going to be able to block it as well. Meanwhile, President Obama saying, look, trust me, this has all the protections in it you've asked for.
It's got strong provisions for workers and the environment. Provisions that, unlike in past agreements, are actually enforceable. If you want in, you have to meet these standards. If you don't, then you're out.
And the president says, and I heard him say this at the news conference where I was there with Prime Minister Renzi of Italy, the president said, the choice is, who do you want to make the rules, the United States or China?
If America doesn't shape the rules of the global economy today to benefit our workers, while our economy is in a position of new global strength, then China will write those rules.
Yes, and by the way, that same argument, word for word almost, we heard from Republican Congressman Paul Ryan, chair of the Ways and Means Committee.
China is negotiating trade deals all over the world, and they're trying to rig the rules in their favor. So it all comes down to this question. Is China going to write the rules of the global economy, or are we?
And President Obama, by the way, really lashed out at critics of the Fast Track Authority, like Senator Sherrod Brown and like Elizabeth Warren. He said that those he called them out by name. Said Elizabeth Warren is wrong on this issue. that she doesn't know what she's talking about. And then he upped the ante over the weekend by comparing Democrats who oppose fast track authority to those who said there were death panels in Obamacare. Now, let me tell you something. He's playing with fire when he says Elizabeth Warren doesn't know what she's talking about and Sherrod Brown doesn't know what he's talking about. Oh, yes, they do. They know this issue inside and out. And Elizabeth Warren's response was, okay, Mr. President, show us the document. Don't keep it secret. If it's true, what you say with these labor protections and environmental protections, and that it's not a giveaway for big corporations to be able to make these, their deals and be protected, while consumers and workers are not, let us see the document. Release the document, and let's have total transparency on it, which I think is a strong argument, right? I mean, if you can't read it, you don't have access to it, how could you just totally trust?
It's pretty shady.
Trust the president to make the best deal. And then no amendments, no changes, no revisions, just vote up or down. Anita, down in so the question is, what do we as consumers think about this? Anita, down in San Antonio. What do you say, Anita?
Good morning, Bill.
Hi.
I know we don't know everything that's in this TPP, but I have to go with who I trust. And when I see people like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and Sherrod Brown against this, and then I see people like Paul Ryan and John Boehner and Mitch McConnell all for it.
I know.
I have to go with who I trust.
Yeah, and
I certainly don't trust Paul Ryan.
I don't either. And, I do generally trust President Obama, but not when he's in the company of that gang, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and he's not always made great decisions when it comes to working with Republicans. Look at the sequester or, other, I don't know, I can't remember offhand, but he's made some bad deals when it comes to dealing with Republicans.
Yeah, sure. Dropping the public plan option, for example. Yeah, right. No, I think he's on the wrong side of this one, Anita. I agree with you. The people you mentioned, you talk Rosa Lauro, Barbara Lee, Sherrod Brown, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. Okay, that's a good way to put it. Are you going to join their team, or are you going to join Paul Ryan, John Boehner, Mitch McConnell, their team? I think it's pretty clear which team I'm on. I don't have a problem with that. That to me is a no-brainer.
Right.
Bill is in Romney, West Virginia. Bill, what do you think?
Well, I see this TPP gig as a sacrifice of our sovereignty, our national sovereignty, because we're giving this power to the TPP court, which all the judges are nothing but CEOs of major multinational corporations, and the domestic sovereignty is being sacrificed just by the process itself.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I don't. Again, we haven't seen the document, but Larry Cohen, who was in last week from the Communication Workers of America, CWA, Bill, made that very same point, that you've got this international court made up of representatives from the major corporations, and any company that's got a beef with some country can take their issue to that court and get it resolved. You and I, as consumers, we don't have that same opportunity, right? Or as workers, members of labor unions who get screwed or lose their job or their wages don't go up or they don't have the right. There's nowhere for them to go. There's no setup and no court set up for them, right? So it's a big giveaway to the big. Again, as Larry kept pointing out, from what we've been told and what has leaked and what we believe is in the document, it's that big giveaway to the giant corporations. But again, we're in the dark. Can't even see the damn thing. Back to Elizabeth Warren. Show us. Yeah, show us the language. This is what you say. Show us the language. Christina, it is, rather, in Mount Airy, Maryland. Hey, Christina.
Hello, Bill. I categorically deny everything and anything about this TPP, like you're saying, and everybody else that's calling in. I think that Obama has lost his way. He is completely disconnected from 318 million Americans. I'm sorry, minus 318,000 that have the 1% of all of our wealth. And, yeah, they need to, I mean, they're short-sighted. Do they not remember what happened when we did NAFTA?
Right. Look at
TPP,
NAFTA. Exactly.
I like this nickname, the Southern Hemisphere American Free Trade Agreement, or SHAFTA, as I'm calling it these days.
Very good, Christina. I forget who it was that called this, has called TPP NAFTA on steroids. I think it was Robert Reich, former Labor Secretary, has called it NAFTA on steroids. Yeah, look, I understand that President Obama, trade is extremely important. We live in a global economy. This is a global environment, global economy. We've got to be there, and we've got to lead on trade in every part of the world. So I think that's where the president's coming from. He wants to be sure that we have fair trading arrangements and strong trading arrangements in the Asian hemisphere. But that doesn't translate into giving him carte blanche authority to make a bad deal. Or cutting Congress out of the deal. That's where I think he's gone wrong. Deborah in Buffalo, New York. Hey, Deborah.
Hey, how you doing, Bill?
All right, good to hear from you.
I'm going to have to dissent inside.
All right. Well, I'm glad you called because, to hear that point of view. Why do you think it's a good deal?
Well, I don't know if it's a good deal, but I trust the president, and I disagree with Elizabeth Warren because Elizabeth Warren knows that you cannot show your hand before the negotiations are done. The president cannot show it because people will walk away from the table. Now, why would he screw his presidency up by doing something that's going to be detrimental to the American people? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, Deborah, all I got to say is we trusted Bill Clinton to make a deal, and he made a bad deal in NAFTA. And I think there is a role for Congress. And that's not a slam on the president. I would say the same thing if George Bush were in the White House, any president. I don't like the secrecy, and I don't like the carte blanche, unilateral, dictatorial almost authority that the president would get if they passed fast track authority. Great conversation, folks. Great calls. We got to take a break here to talk to Scott Bland from the National Journal, and then we'll be right back here with the Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.
I categorically deny everything and anything about this.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
Sometimes when I'm walking down the street, I'm not necessarily looking out and seeing all these water-wasting lawns and people that aren't as connected to their neighbors and their lives as they could be. I'm walking down the street looking, going, edible oases, rainwater, fed landscape, and just looking at the possibility of these sort of landscapes up and down the streets of neighborhoods and communities all across this world. Small actions do ripple, and they add up, and they have a cumulative impact. And so when you're building upon your small mindful actions, you have the confidence and the ability to take on something a little bit greater. So that could be nice. This, in the context of where we're at as a planet with climate change and these really big issues, and people that are more disconnected and less skilled than ever, it becomes even more amazing and powerful how much of a solution this is to design these ecological gardens and to come together with shared vision and shared voice. There's never been a time where your choices have mattered more. doing something as simple as us transforming a landscape creates a model that anybody could look at far and wide, and you're sharing food and connecting and building skills together in your own neighborhood. It's a richer way to live in normal times, but in the new normal of climate change and erratic weather and economic upheaval, it becomes essential. Whether it's me, you, Gandhi, Che, MLK, Willy Wonka, whoever, past, present, or future, the power of our daily actions is all that we have. You know, and like Archimedes said, give me a place to stand and a lever long enough and I'll move the world. And that's what those simple actions do. They move the world every day.
Is the Bill Press Show.
12 minutes before the top of the hour, we've been talking about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP, or the Fast Track Authority. That is certainly going to be a big issue in the 2016 lead up to 2016 for sure. As far as I know, all the Republican candidates are for it. We haven't heard from Hillary Clinton where she really stands on TPP. Made some generalized comments, but not a endorsement or outright opposition to it. Looking at the national political scene, Scott Bland joins us from the National Journal Hotline, editor-in-chief. Hello, Scott. Did you survive the White House Correspondents' Weekend?
I did. I was actually watching playoff hockey as the festivities were raging.
Well, yeah, I must say the Hill party Friday night was a great party at the Canadian Embassy, and the Canadian ambassador. That was his remarks to the crowd. He said, "I want you to have as much fun here as you would have at a hockey playoff game." Only the Canadians would make a reference to hockey in terms of fun, I guess. So. I happened to meet the campaign manager for Rand Paul over the weekend, and also the campaign manager for Mike Huckabee, and somebody else who's working for Carly Fiorina. And it looks like both Mike Huckabee and Carly Fiorina are definitely going to be jumping in. Scott, have you heard that?
Sure. Well, the most recent signals that both have sent certainly lean toward that. Huckabee is going to be making a big announcement at the beginning of May. Same goes for Fiorina, and she actually confirmed in a slip of the tongue that we're seeing become a little more common from some of these unannounced candidates. She basically confirmed the news to a group in Iowa last week. So that this is really happening. I think we're going to end up with at least a dozen candidates at some point, and then potentially the field will shrink from there. But there's no indication yet of any real hesitancy from people looking at this with good reason. I think I think a lot of people think with an open race coming up, anything can happen.
And on the Democratic side, Martin O'Malley has also dropped some hints that he'll be making an announcement early May.
Mm-hmm, that's right, and he's becoming a little more pointed, a little less oblique in his criticisms of an as yet unnamed candidate who sounds an awful lot like Hillary Clinton.
Right.
And so I think that's all kind of part of the move toward eventually setting something up for a run here.
Two more sort of pseudo primaries this weekend on the Republican side. In Nevada, the Sheldon Adelson primary, I guess they're calling it, and then Faith and Freedom in Iowa. How did they go, and who's sort of emerging there, and who? What would you say?
Yeah, the Iowa confab in particular was very interesting. This, it's a social issues focused event from the Iowa Faith and Freedom Coalition. There were, I believe, 9 White House hopefuls, Republican White House hopefuls, who spoke at the forum. And interestingly, one of the things that emerged is that a lot of these candidates are so in line on social issues that they're turning to national security as an issue that's really growing in importance to social conservatives, and using that to distinguish themselves a little bit. And we have a story on our website this morning from Adam Wallner, quoting the president of the Iowa Faith and Freedom Coalition, saying that if you don't have security, it's all over. Nothing else matters. So it was very interesting to see Rick Santorum, for example, I think exclusively focused on non-social issues during his speech to the social conservative gathering.
So this is the Rick Santorum, Mike Huckabee crowd, right? Was Ted Cruz there as well?
He was, and he actually was the only candidate that didn't touch on national security. He focused almost entirely on religious freedom, and he's definitely a new power in that section of the field, and one potentially to be reckoned with as the Iowa caucuses draw closer.
Just a funny aside, I met the Mike Huckabee's person at the very wild MSNBC after party after the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and I said, that's great. Is the governor here? And he just sort of got a grin. He said, I don't think Governor Huckabee would be very comfortable in this crowd. No, which is certainly true. And Sheldon Adelson, is there an anointed one for the Adelson in the Adelson pro-Israel primary?
Well, last week there was a report that Marco Rubio is reportedly in the lead in the so-called Adelson primary. But I think it's important to remember with these things, there's really no reason for Adelson or any of these other super mega donors to align with a candidate at this point. Why pick someone when you can kind of guarantee that they're going to, that all of them are going to be coming to you for the next month in the hope of getting your support, right? And so I feel like this is not going to be a quick process for Adelson or anyone else, no matter how much he may like someone like Marco Rubio or how much Charles Koch may appreciate what Scott Walker has done in Wisconsin.
President Obama's line at the dinner about something about the Koch brothers, and he said they raised all this money. He said, "Yeah, but I raised all this money, and my middle name is Hussein." Yeah, right. So, okay. Well, Scott, we were so focused on the dinner here this weekend, didn't have a chance to keep up with everything that's happening on the political front. Thank you for doing so for us this morning. Always good to talk to you. Thanks, Scott.
Take care.
NationalJournal.com is where you find the National Journal Hotline.
This is the Bill Press Show.
The most important issue on this planet right now is to protect and conserve biodiversity in the world's oceans. And I don't think people realize just how intimate our connection is with the oceans themselves. Not only do they provide the very foundation of life and control our weather, but life just simply could not exist without a healthy ocean. The real problem, though, is apathy. It's all out of sight. It's all out of mind, and people don't even think about it. But it doesn't matter whether you live in Peoria or on the coast. The fact is, whatever happens in the ocean affects all life forms on the planet Earth. If the oceans die, then civilization collapses. We all die. We cannot live on this planet without the oceans. This is, in fact, not the planet Earth. It's the planet ocean, but because we're a land-dwelling species, we refer to it as Earth. But it is the planet ocean, and the oceans are the heart and the foundation of all life on the planet.
Two anti-government, self-described revolutionaries have shot up a pizza restaurant as well as a Walmart in Las Vegas.
The internationally syndicated political series, The David Pakman Show, provides progressive talk, analysis, and interviews with the nation's youngest radio and television host, David Pakman. Find out more and catch up on all the latest episodes by visiting our website at freespeech.org.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Coming up in the next hour, Patrick Murphy from Defense One is going to join us to talk about the drone program. More under scrutiny now after the announcement by the president last week that a drone strike, he didn't call it a drone strike, but that's what it was, accidentally killed an American aid worker, Warren Weinstein, and an Italian aid worker, Giovanni Loporti. And Patrick will tell us the extent of that program and what changes we might see coming up in the next hour. A little bit later, we'll be joined by Susan Swain from C-SPAN to talk about her new book on all the First Ladies. So lots more coming up here on the Bill Press Show. Good to have you with us. Stay tuned. 2 more hours coming up.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Another week full of news, and this is Monday, April 27. We dive right in here after the weekend. Hope you had a good one and are ready to tackle the news of the day this whole new week here on the Bill Press Show. We are coming to you live on Free Speech TV, nationwide and worldwide on our video stream, TawkrTV, youtube.com/TawkrTV. Coming to you from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., and our studio on Capitol Hill, right in the heart of the action. Devastation around the world in Nepal, over 3,000 dead, and you know that death toll is going to rise after this horrific earthquake and series of aftershocks, each one of them equivalent to a major earthquake. Dozens of people stranded on Mount Everest. Relief worldwide from nations around the world is rushing into Nepal, but it's so far away, it's hard to get there. And meanwhile, with the rubble, they're still digging people out of the rubble with their hands. Back here in this country, Washington, D.C., White House journalists spent the entire weekend, me included, celebrating ourselves. The weekend, of course, was the weekend of the White House Correspondents' Dinner, with all the before parties and the after parties and the after parties. President Obama and Cicely Strong from Saturday Night Live putting in very strong performances at the dinner. Also, Fast Track now has passed committees, the important committees in the House and in the Senate. It will soon be up for a floor vote in both bodies. House Democrats are convinced they've got the votes to block President Obama from getting Fast Track authority. And today, Loretta Lynch will be sworn in by Vice President Joe Biden, finally, as our next Attorney General of the United States. Give us a call about any of the above. 866-55-PRESS is the toll-free number. Good to have you with us this Monday morning.
This is the Bill Press Show.
One of the most exciting scientific findings of the past half-century has been the discovery of widespread trophic cascades. A trophic cascade is an ecological process which starts at the top of the food chain and tumbles all the way down to the bottom. And the classic example is what happened in the Yellowstone National Park in the United States when wolves were reintroduced in 1995. Now, we all know that wolves kill various species of animals, but perhaps we're slightly less aware that they give life to many others. Before the wolves turned up, they'd been absent for 70 years, that the numbers of deer, because there was nothing to hunt them, had built up in the Yellowstone Park, and despite efforts by humans to control them, they'd managed to reduce much of the vegetation there to almost nothing. They'd just grazed it away. But as soon as the wolves arrived, even though they were few in number, they started to have the most remarkable effects. First, of course, they killed some of the deer, but that wasn't the major thing. Much more significantly, they radically changed the behavior of the deer. The deer started avoiding certain parts of the park, the places where they could be trapped most easily, particularly the valleys and the gorges. And immediately those places started to regenerate. In some areas, the height of the trees quintupled in just 6 years. Bare valley sides quickly became forests of aspen and willow and cottonwood. And as soon as that happened, the birds started moving in. The number of songbirds, of migratory birds, started to increase greatly. The number of beavers started to increase because beavers like to eat the trees. And beavers, like wolves, are ecosystem engineers. They create niches for other species. And the dams they built in the rivers provided habitats for otters and muskrats and ducks and fish and reptiles and amphibians. The wolves killed coyotes, and as a result of that, the number of rabbits and mice began to rise, which meant more hawks, more weasels, more foxes, more badgers. Ravens and bald eagles came down to feed on the carrion that the wolves had left. Bears fed on it too, and their population began to rise as well, partly also because there were more berries growing on the regenerating shrubs. And the bears reinforced the impact of the wolves by killing some of the calves of the deer. But here's where it gets really interesting. The wolves changed the behavior of the rivers. They began to meander less. There was less erosion. The channels narrowed, more pools formed, more riffle sections, all of which were great for wildlife habitats. The rivers changed in response to the wolves. And the reason was that the regenerating forests stabilized the banks so that they collapsed less often, so that the rivers became more fixed in their course. Similarly, by driving the deer out of some places and the vegetation recovering on the valley sides, there was less soil erosion because the vegetation stabilized that as well. So the wolves, small in number, transformed not just the ecosystem of the Yellowstone National Park, this huge area of land, but also its physical geography.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Death toll in Nepal now estimated at 3,700 plus. Relief efforts underway. Problem is still more serious aftershocks. Some of them, the aftershocks themselves, as strong as a powerful earthquake. Keeping our eye on that part of the world, we say good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Bill Press Show this Monday, April 27. Coming to you live from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. Scene of the big White House Correspondents' Dinner on Saturday night, and then all the big parties on Thursday and Friday and Saturday and Sunday, and now it is back to work. Back to work. Although you wouldn't know that looking at the president's schedule today, as we'll tell you later in the hour. He must have a hangover. He's got nothing on his schedule today. He gets a daily briefing and then maybe goes back to bed.
Long weekend of partying, man.
Yeah, well, he played a little golf on Saturday and then had the big dinner Saturday night. So I guess he's saying, hell, I worked on Saturday. I'm taking Monday off. But we're not. We are here with you to bring you up to date on the news of the day, wherever it's happening. We'll tell you about it and give you a chance to sound off and give us your calls at 866-55-PRESS. Or you can send your comments on Twitter at BP Show, on Facebook at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. Peter Ogburn and Elisa Murphy, leading Team Press here this morning. Hello, guys.
Hi, Bill.
Hey, good morning.
Alicia Cruz here with your calls. Lots of calls this morning about Fast Track Authority and TPP and other issues. And she'll take your calls again at 866-55-PRESS. Cyprian Bolding, our videographer. Lights on, cameras on, action. Thanks to Cyprian. We're looking at you on Free Speech and on TawkrTV. Yes, the dinner Saturday night, as always. Cicely Strong did, I thought, a good job, but it is hard following the President of the United States. He just crushes it.
Yeah.
Every time, as he did Saturday night. I thought one of his best lines was about he was talking about the different presidential candidates, including Bernie Sanders.
And Bernie Sanders might run. I like Bernie. Bernie's an interesting guy. Apparently, some folks really want to see a pot-smoking socialist in the White House. We could get a third Obama term after all.
Yeah, that's what they said about him. That's what they say about Bernie, right?
Bernie. You used to intern for Bernie.
I was his intern. I never
you ever smoke pot with Bernie?
I never saw him smoke pot. No.
Okay.
No. I used to get him coffee.
Scoop.
I never got him pot.
Okay.
Right. He had other people.
You could if you needed to.
He had other people who did that.
Yeah, that's right.
Who did that for him. President Obama also, he said, I'm getting old. He said, I'm getting so old that John Boehner has already invited Netanyahu to speak at my funeral.
That's pretty good.
That was great humor. Hey, so coming up a little bit later in this hour, Patrick Murphy from Defense One is going to join us to bring us up to date on the drone program in the next hour. Former New York Times, now Fox reporter Judith Miller will be here to talk about her new book, and Susan Swain has a new book about the First Ladies. So lots coming up, but first, Peter.
This is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. We go to the sports desk where, Alex Rodriguez is back playing baseball, Bill, playing for the Yankees.
Yeah.
And over the weekend, they finished up their series with the Mets by winning that Subway Series, 2 games out of 3. But A-Rod hit a home run yesterday. It was his 659th of his career. That puts him one shy of Willie Mays, who is in 4th place.
No
so
kidding.
Just a few more dingers for him, and he will take over that slot. So
yeah.
Congratulations, I guess, for A-Rod. He's apparently not using steroids anymore, so he can still hit home runs. So I guess these count.
Maybe there's some leftover steroid in him, huh?
Yeah, maybe. Still in the system. In 1992, a man in Montana found a Triceratops skull. Just the first, the 2 little horns sticking out of the ground.
Yeah.
He spent years excavating. It was finally excavated in 2003, and you can now buy it in Hong Kong. It is up for sale for $1.8 million. It is a 95% complete skull. It's 9 feet long, 5 feet high, 4.5 feet wide.
Oh, my God.
It's one of the most intact dinosaur skulls ever. But it's weird how it took this trip from Montana all the way to Hong Kong, and now you can own it. You get 1.8 mil kicking around, Bill. You can buy a tricycle.
Yeah, but that should be in the Natural History Museum.
I agree with you. I agree with you. But if you want it, you can have it.
Thank you, but no thanks.
You're welcome. And to the box office over the weekend, Fast and Furious 7 pulled in $18.3 million here at home, which was enough to keep it on top of the box office for the 4th straight week. The bigger news is globally, It has pulled in $1.3 billion.
Oh my God!
That makes it the 5th highest grossing movie of all time, and it's just a fraction away from taking over Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, which is in 4th place. It will take over that slot, so we'll see how far it keeps going. You haven't seen that one?
No, I was going to say, making all that money, and I haven't even seen it.
Yet.
Yeah, well, it's not going to get any money from me. Doesn't need it.
Not really your kind of movie.
No, exactly. Thank you, Peter. A very unusual interview by Diane Sawyer is getting certainly a lot of attention. Wanted to talk about that here at the top of the hour. The organization GLAAD, which really focuses on stereotypes of and works against stereotypes of gays and lesbians in the entertainment community and represents LGBT actors and actresses. GLAAD put out a statement over the weekend, opening with this statement: "Today, millions of people learned that someone they know is transgender." And, of course, they're referring to this interview between Diane Sawyer and Bruce Jenner, the great track and field athlete, won the gold in the decathlon in the 76 Olympics and has been sort of a rock star and celebrity, both sports star and in the entertainment field ever since. That Bruce Jenner announcing that, indeed, he has made the transition from being a man to being a woman. In his interview, or her interview with him, and in talking about it, Bruce Jenner said, this started, he's felt this way, he's felt confused about sexuality from a very, very early age.
I would say I've always been very confused with my gender identity since I was this big. I'm not stuck in anybody's body. It's just who I am as a human being. My brain is much more female than it is male. It's hard for people to understand that, but that's what my soul is. So can I take my ponytail out? Yeah, why not? Huh? We're talking about all this stuff. Yeah, let's take the damn ponytail out.
So Diane Sawyer, I guess, asked him the question that a lot of us would ask. I mean, so what are you?
Are you a woman?
Yes, for all intents and purposes, I am a woman. People look at me differently. They see you as this macho male, but my heart and my soul and everything that I do in life, it is part of me. That female side is part of me. That's who I am.
So he says he now considers himself a woman. And not only a woman, but get this, a Republican woman.
He actually was the first one to say the actual word transgender. I will certainly give him credit for that. But not to get political, I've just never been a big fan of Obama. Kind of more on the conservative side.
Are you a Republican?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a bad thing? I believe in the Constitution.
No. Do you think that it will be maybe unsettling thing for some people in the conservative wing of the Republican Party?
I've thought about that.
Yeah, I think Rick Santorum might have a little problem with that.
You kidding me?
I think Mike Huckabee might have a little problem with that.
Look at all the questions that the Republican candidates, that none of them have a great answer for this gay marriage question. Would you attend the wedding of a friend of yours if they were gay?
They are all over the place.
Can you imagine a transgendered Republican, how they would handle that?
No. Yeah, right. Would you attend Bruce Jenner's, coming out party?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So Diane follows through. Well, what are you going to do about John Boehner?
You're going to go to Mitch McConnell and John Boehner and ask them to help champion this cause.
I would do that, in a heartbeat. Why not?
Yeah, well, guess what? I don't think you'll get very far. But, this is a very, very... By the way, 17 million people I saw tuned into this interview. It was
huge.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge. And you got to admire Bruce Jenner for doing this. And, what I think what makes it so... This is so unusual about Bruce Jenner is that first of all, he's so well known, and so well known as sort of a macho kind of guy, right? An Olympic athlete. He has been married 3 times. He has fathered 6 children. He's 65 years old, right? And he is finally coming to terms with his sexuality. And the one thing that I have maybe a little disagreement with what Glad said, that millions of people learn that someone they know is transgender. Well, I don't know Bruce Jenner. I know and have lots of really, really good friends who are LGBT. I don't know anybody who's transgender.
Right.
So I think this is very important. But I think it introduces Americans to a whole new reality, right? That there are a lot of people who have made the transition from man to woman or woman to man, and that's very, very important that they be able to do that and be accepted for doing that.
It was, for so long with the LGBT issue, right? People were able to either ignore it or say that they weren't on board with it because, they didn't know any gay people. And then you had Ellen come out, and you had multiple celebrities come out to where it's not even a thing anymore.
No.
For a celebrity to come out of the closet. And you learn, people become more comfortable coming out of the closet. And you become more comfortable with that idea. Like, oh, they're not aliens from outer space. They're here, and they're just like us. So people know who Bruce Jenner is.
Yeah, they're our brothers and sisters. They are our brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews and aunts and uncles, boom, 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 right? This is at another level.
It's another level.
Yeah. But,
But it's real.
It's real, and I don't know how many thousands of Americans or people around the world fit into this category. But just when you said the initials, that tells you a lot. It used to be you just say gays and lesbians, gays. I accept gays and lesbians. No. But then LGB, bi, that in and of itself is another category that's real. And there are a lot of people fit into that category, including now one member of Congress, at least one openly bi member of Congress. And the T, and the transgender. But the T was still, I think, if you will, in the closet, because we didn't really know that much about it or that many until Bruce Jenner. And Bruce Jenner makes it real. Here's someone that we all have seen over the years, and he's saying, yeah, I consider myself a woman.
To hear somebody flesh that out is important. Not just for people who are uncomfortable with it, but, for people who are supportive of the cause. Like, present company included. I don't know any transgendered people personally, but to hear somebody say, this is what I'm going through, this is what I'm feeling, this is my life story, it's so important to listen to that and hear that so that when it does come up and someone in your life does have that experience, you know where they're coming from. It's huge.
Yeah, and then this of course raises all the issues of that transgender people should be accepted and not be discriminated against when it comes to the workplace, right? And there are some real issues around that because people have been uncomfortable with it. And I think when you see a Bruce Jenner, he's going to advance the cause, I think, of tolerance. And the fact that this comes 2 days before the Supreme Court considers same-sex marriage, where they're expected to make marriage equality the law of the land, things are moving pretty fast in this area. Yeah, this is great. Very, very important interview. And I think it will make Americans aware of a reality that they either didn't want to talk about or were totally ignorant of, myself included, until this happened.
The only disturbing part of the interview for me was when he said he's a Republican. Like, how can you still be a Republican and be in those shoes?
But I think it's delicious to think.
It really is.
Okay, will he be invited to speak at the Republican convention next year? 866-55-PRESS. Love your comments on this interview if you got to see it. It was a very, very moving interview. It took a lot of courage on his part to do it.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job, and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand, and they don't get it, and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university? And,
people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies. In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
The hour, Patrick Tucker from Defense One joins us in the next half hour to talk about what's going on with the drone program here in the United States. But we're talking now about the big interview on 2020 with Diane Sawyer with Bruce Jenner, if you will, coming out of the closet as having made the transition from male to female and saying now, yes, he is a woman, considers himself a woman, although I've read that he has not yet had the actual physical operation.
And it should be pointed out that he wants to be called a man for now.
And he wants to be called
he,
right,
him.
Right, and he wants to be called
this.
Bruce, still called Bruce, and referred to as he. Again, going back to GLAAD, their statement over the weekend, they point out every transgender person's journey is unique, and by choosing to share this story, Bruce Jenner adds another layer to America's understanding of what it means to be transgender. Indeed, at a level we've never seen before. Pat, calling from out in Beloit, Wisconsin. Hey, Pat, how are you?
Hello, Bill.
Yeah.
About 20 years ago, I've always worked with high-risk kids that had various problems and whatever. And a young man came to us at the alternative high school, and I heard he was coming, and he was a cross-dresser, which is what you called people more at that time.
Yeah.
And so the first few weeks, I thought, I'm going to call him by his given name. He's a male. But you know, after a few weeks, you began to realize this kid was for real. He wasn't putting on an act. He truly was. And so I began to call him by the name that he wanted to be called by. And as the year progressed, I had a great deal of compassion for him because he could not fit in anywhere. He was not accepted anywhere. We could shelter him there, but the world wasn't going to shelter him. It was just when he dressed as a woman and came out of men's bathrooms in the building.
Yeah.
But, you know, the thing, because it was an administrative building also, so you got a cross-section of people. But I've often wondered what became of him, because eventually he moved on. He just didn't...
Well, yeah, Pat, just short of time here, just got to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt, but I think that's been the story so far, and there is a lot of confusion. It's been very, very tough for members of the transgender community, and now one thing I think this is going to make a big difference with Bruce Jenner, that people have more understanding and more acceptance. I'm not sure John
This
Boehner will.
is the Bill Press Show.
So this is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. When I say dot, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
All right, here we go at 33 minutes after the hour. The Bill Press Show, Monday, April 27, live from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., where last week President Obama sort of stunned the nation by coming into the briefing room at the White House, revealing that an American airstrike had, a drone strike, let's face it, let's call it what it was, had accidentally killed an American and an Italian aid worker, the American Warren Weinstein and the Italian Giovanni Loporti. We didn't even know that they were held in this Al-Qaeda compound. The president making that announcement and apologizing to their families for this accidental killing. And saying that will prompt and already triggered an investigation into how we're using drones and are we taking all the proper precautions to make sure that civilians are not caught in the crossfire, if you will. Patrick Tucker is here with us, technology editor for Defense One, who's been following this issue very closely. Patrick, it's good to see you.
Good to be here.
Why won't the White House just admit that this was a drone strike? We tried to get that out of Josh Earnest and could not, and the president wouldn't say it either.
I think the White House is feeling a little bit sensitive about the drone program and how popular it is, how controversial it is. A lot of people have issues with it. Of course, it's an issue that a lot of people around the world, particularly in parts of the world where the U.S. has ongoing military operations but doesn't have, where we aren't at war. A lot of people have very strong feelings about this. What's interesting is that
but there's no doubt we are still using drones as killing machines.
Yeah, well, we are going to use them more. The drone program, either the one under the CIA, which is the targeted killing program, or using drones in concert with fighter jets and fighter aircraft in Syria and Iraq, has been, according to officials, like a tremendous success. It decreases the costs of ongoing operations. It makes it cheaper and much less risky to take out targets. And there's pretty much no appetite for reversing really any of that. There's some political appetite for some modifications, but drone strikes in general are not going to go away. They're likely going to increase.
And they have vastly increased under President Obama.
Yes. That's in part a result of the fact that we have been removing ground forces from places like Afghanistan and Iraq. But we continue to need to do operations there. And instability in the Middle East has continued, although we have been removing forces from places where that instability exists. So that's part of it. The president is really faced with a really difficult situation. On the one hand, they want to have an impact, and they want to continue to be able to target al-Qaeda and target al-Qaeda affiliates, target ISIS in places where we have an interest, but they don't want to commit a whole bunch of troops on the ground. He got elected on the basis of removing U.S. ground forces from those theaters, from those places, and so this is how you see an increase, a ramp up in drone strikes. But what's interesting is that even though Warren Weinstein was a U.S. hostage that was killed, actually it was 3 U.S. civilians that were killed. It's just that 2 of them were senior al-Qaeda. So when we talk
but that
about
was a different attack,
right? It was
two different strikes.
Right, exactly. But they too weren't actually targeted. They were just acceptable, like casualties. And that's what's actually sort of strange about the way we do these drone strikes. It's 8 different Americans that were killed. One of them, this hostage, Warren Weinstein, it's extremely unfortunate, completely unintended, an enormous accident, something that causes the president to go to the briefing room and make a big statement. But only one was actually targeted. And that tells you something about this technology and what it's like to try and use it in absence of a lot of human intelligence on the ground to guide you.
Well, exactly. So I wanted to ask you about that. Well, first, these drones are operating under the new rules, right, that the president announced at his speech at the War College a year or so ago, right? And as I understand those new rules, it said that the drones would only be used when there was a direct threat against the United States and where it was impossible to capture them and bring these people to trial.
Right.
Okay. Is that true in this case? I mean, these people in this very remote area of Pakistan in an al-Qaeda compound considered a direct threat to the United States?
Well, the language suggests there's the drone targeting goes into effect when the threat is imminent. And that's when you're talking about whether or not the United States has the right to target a U.S. citizen who's a member of al-Qaeda if that person presents an imminent threat, meaning they're just about to, or they're playing a part in an operation that has direct and somewhat immediate consequences for the United States. There's a plan in place. There's people in place. There's material in place. That's what that seems to suggest. But what is an imminent threat is a little broad, and it's hard to figure out what that is. We just know that it's slightly different from a significant threat, which is how the U.S. used to describe non-U.S. citizens who could be targeted under the drone strike program. So if you were non-U.S. and you posed a significant threat, they could target with a drone strike. If you were U.S., you had to pose an imminent threat, but they've since come out and said that they're going to only target people who pose an imminent threat. And what that means remains kind of up to them. They want you to feel a sense of urgency, though, about that. Like that suggests an individual who's making a clear plan to attack the United States, has the material resources to carry it out, and clearly has the will to carry it out.
Yeah, and I mean, imminent to me means this is about to happen, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't do something, that's going. And what about the impossibility of rounding them up, and bringing them in, and it's always easier to just kill them on the spot.
Yes, it's definitely easier to kill them on the spot. And this is the problem. So part of the allure of drone strikes in general is that you don't have to have people in place doing extremely risky operations, potentially opening themselves up to capture. But that's the only way you actually get intelligence out of these people.
Yeah.
So when we go and grab someone and then move them someplace and interrogate them, this is also an extremely controversial thing that happens. So the idea of like that being less controversial than targeting with a drone strike, the American public and pretty much the entire international community would have a problem with any of this that we do. It's all problematic in one way or another. So
despite what happened, and despite this tragic accident it leading to the death of Mr. Weinstein and Mr. Laporte, I haven't heard a lot of complaints in Congress from Democrats or Republicans about the drone program. It still remains pretty popular. And with the American people, too. Is that what you find at Defense One?
There is not a congressional appetite to change it. The American public, we post a lot of stuff on drone programs and things like this, and there's some skepticism about it in general, but for the most part, anybody that considers himself sort of like a friend of American service people is broadly appreciative of the fact that it's not U.S. boots on the ground, that we are able to do what we feel or we're told or we understand needs to be done without putting more U.S. lives at risk. The closest that we've seen very recently to any sort of opposition to this, John McCain came out recently and said that the program should be moved from CIA to DOD. So that's the targeted killing
Didn't
program.
President Obama say that at one time, too?
I don't. I
thought he had, but
confess, I don't recall.
Yeah.
But he didn't do it.
No, right. Yeah, and the New York Times, an article, I think it was a Saturday's paper, or Friday, the headline, Deep Support in Washington for CIA's Drone Missions.
Right.
So that you don't hear a clamor in Congress saying we got to stop these things or we got to rein them in or whatever. But I do want to ask you before we break about the intelligence, because how is it that they could do which they admitted, hundreds of hours of surveillance over this compound and not know that there were 2 hostages there? It shows that certainly the inadequacy of remote intelligence, I guess, or satellite intelligence.
There's satellite intelligence. There's also the ISR that comes off the drones themselves, and they do what's called orbits, which means that they fly pretty much around the clock over areas of interest. They've got a whole bunch of different technological capabilities for measuring the number of occupants, things like that, thermal signatures, infrared, things like this.
People going in and out, right?
Right. The problem with that is that thermal signatures can be indicative of a very particular person, but not until you have a data set to compare the thermal signature that you're getting against. So it's just really hard without a human being there to figure out who's who and what's what. And this is in part why this program happens under CIA, because we don't talk assets that are in places like this, but DOD assets, you're talking about, a potential force that could be very large. So this is why this program happens under CIA, because, and the failures that exist, this is why you see them, because we just don't have human intelligence to really help us in places like Pakistan understand what's really going on in compounds like this. And the drone program allows us to hit Pakistan without being there, which means we're not going to hit it well.
Right. So it sounds like we don't expect, should not expect any changes to our drone program. Patrick Tucker here from Defense One. Take a quick break, and I look forward to your questions, your comments on the other side at 866-55-PRESS.
This is the Bill Press Show.
What gets you into college? Good SAT scores? High GPA? Lots of extracurriculars?
Sure, but what you really need is money.
If you don't have the cash, you'll need a loan.
And we mean huge student loans, because the cost of college has risen 1,000% in the last 30 years.
This means big money for the banks that collect fees and interest.
Now, millions of young people are starting their adult lives with an average of $29,000 of loans on their backs.
Altogether, we're talking $1.2 trillion in student debt.
And more people are finding it impossible to pay them back. Welcome to the student debt crisis.
The increasing demand for higher education and cuts to state funding gave colleges a huge incentive to keep inflating prices.
I graduated about a year ago, currently in $35,000 of debt.
I am in debt about like $25,000.
I owe $23,000.
I owe over $50,000 in student loans.
38.8 million Americans owe money on a student loan. And the biggest names in banking are making huge profits off the booming student loan industry. Sallie Mae, the largest provider of private student loans, made $949 million last year.
They only give you about 6 months to look for a job. You have to start paying back the loan. It's very pressuring, especially nowadays. It's very hard to find a job.
Over half of the students graduating in 2012 could not find a decent paying job.
They either had low-wage jobs or unpaid internships or were unemployed altogether.
So you can't make the payments. You start incurring late fees, which makes the loan even harder to pay off.
And it stays with you for years, even decades.
Right now, a third of the people who started repaying their loans are delinquent or in default.
That's 13.7 million people, more than the populations of Chicago, New York, and San Francisco combined.
Worse, it's not just the borrowers who are in trouble. Many loans require co-signers.
So if the student is unable to pay, that co-signer, a father, a mother, or a grandparent, is now on the hook.
Even a grandparent's Social Security benefits can be garnished to pay the loan.
We should have an answer to this. If you get really behind in your car payment or your credit cards, you can file for bankruptcy.
But Congress has made it nearly impossible to discharge student loans through bankruptcy.
Big institutions make big profits while students try to make ends meet under crushing debt.
Is this how we want our education system to work?
The whole point of going to college is to get the career you want. But lately I've been discouraged because no one can afford school. You get a job just to pay off your student loans.
We need higher education, not higher debt.
Sign up to end the student debt crisis at higherednotdebt.org.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
All right, 12 minutes now before the top of the hour. Judith Miller, commentator for Fox News, former New York Times reporter, at the top of the next hour right now. Patrick Tucker is here from Defense One, talking about the drone program, now under review after the accidental killing of an American and Italian aid workers. Warren Weinstein, I heard, Patrick, over the weekend, started out in the Peace Corps. He was very active in the Peace Corps before he moved on.
Yeah.
That's where we started. Let's get a quick comment here from Steve out in Blair, Nebraska. Hey, Steve.
Hi, I'm a member of Veterans for Peace.
Yes.
I think you're missing the entire point.
Go ahead.
This program is a terrible, terrible thing. It's a terror program. These things hover over there. You never know when you're going to get hit or anything. The idea that they got these people right here this time shows up how many times they've actually killed innocents. It's been very, very much, and it's all covered up. To talk about imminent threat and all that stuff is they're not using that. They're killing people. They have no idea what they're doing, and the terror that's involved here is causing us more enemies than we'll ever kill.
All right, Steve, got your point. I've heard that from many other veterans and opponents of the drone program. But again, Patrick, with the political establishment,
we've got so you
don't expect any real changes here, I guess.
No. What it represents is this: we've got if we want to continue to have any sort of influence or effect in places like Pakistan against the Al-Qaeda that's there, we have a choice. We can either potentially put troops in Afghanistan. We can deploy 20,000, 30,000 GIs in Pakistan and Afghanistan again and reattempt what we attempted there before. Or we can have robots circling overhead and attempt to take out targets that way. And it just represents really hard choices. And what the drone program is a way out of some of those choices. You know what I mean? Politicians get to go home and say, look at what we're doing in order to target Al-Qaeda. We remain vigilant in this. We remain really invested in this. We continue to strike ISIS in Syria and Iraq without putting any lives at risk. And that's something they need to be able to say, because we kind of want it both ways as the American public. We want to be able to deal with these threats. This is something that if we don't deal with it, it becomes a real political liability. This is why national security is rising as a political issue, but we also aren't ready to talk about what allows you to have influence in places like this, and this is the deployment of troops.
Yeah. I think to me, it's sharing some of what Steve said. It's the ease of it, I guess, and the distance that it enables us to have from the actual killing and the actual acts that I find we shouldn't be able to have it so easy, and I mean that's the whole debate over the use of drones.
Right.
And But I think a lot of people say, well, as you pointed out,
Yeah.
it's better than putting boots on the ground and, and cheaper. And so we can basically do it and run these little machines from Nevada or out at the CIA headquarters, wherever their operators are, and never see combat.
Yeah.
Right? Never see that.
Well, at the same time, though, there's a limit to what that you're going to accomplish with that, even under a best-case scenario. No one ever surrenders to a robot. I mean, that's never going to be a thing that happens.
True.
In order to change these realities on the ground, you have to have people on the ground.
And I think it does create a lot of more hostility towards the United States in some of these countries, particularly from what people that I've talked to in some of those villages where they live under the threat of these drones all the time.
Right.
We could debate this until the cows come home. Let's say hello to Stacy out in Chicago. Hello, Stacy.
Hey, good morning.
Yeah.
I just want to agree with what your guest just said. Until we have a viable alternative, I'd much rather have this be the way that we do it than put boots on the ground and have men and women put in harm's way. I mean, I'm all for a better way if there is, but if we don't want Al-Qaeda to proliferate, then we've got to do something.
Well, I think that's... thanks, Stacey. I appreciate the call. I appreciate you listening. I think that's where most of the American people are coming from.
Yeah,
Patrick.
This is true. We don't want to have a situation where we don't feel in control of what Al Qaeda is doing, where we don't feel like we have any ability to change the way that organization is working constantly, like around the clock against us. There's no one who is pretending that we don't have really lethal non-state actor enemies in places that we don't want to have a presence, and yet at the same time we can't go back to the Bush wars.
All right, we just have a minute left, but I have to ask you on another, since you're the technology editor for Defense One.
Right.
How serious is this word? Over the weekend we found out that Russian hackers were actually reading the president's emails?
Russian hackers were reading the president's non-classified emails, and that's a big difference. So that does represent a big problem, but it's not a one that is insurmountable. What's also interesting is that last week, Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter, speaking at Stanford, also said that at some point, Russian hackers infiltrated DoD networks, like it actually hacked into it. And he pointed that out to say DoD responded quickly, they quickly regrouped. So when they make these announcements, they're actually sort of showcasing how resilient they are in dealing with these intrusions. And they also are pointing out over and over again the growing capabilities of Russia. And part of the reason for talking about this stuff is to push support for a cyber information sharing bill. There's one version out the House, there's one version out the Senate, and you're going to be hearing more about them. And that's part of the reason why you're seeing political leaders talking about these incursions the way that they are.
This is interesting. The Russians can read the president's emails, but we can't read Hillary Clinton's emails. I mean, God, it's just not fair somehow. Hey, Patrick, good to meet you. Good. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Say hello to all of our good friends over there at Defense One. We'll be right back and tell you what's on the president's schedule today.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Hey, never satisfied with 2 hours. We're moving into hour number 3 pretty soon here. You won't be able to catch hour number 3 on Free Speech TV until 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 Central. You want to get it right away? Go over to our video stream, youtube.com/Tawker, TAWKR-TV. 2 important authors coming up in the next hour. Judith Miller, a contributor to Fox News, has a new book out called My Story, one of the most controversial journalists of the country. And then Susan Swain from C-SPAN will be here to talk about her new book on all the first ladies of the United States, all the way from Martha to Michelle. Hour number 3 coming up.
A few years ago, plastic bag waste in our city came to a tipping point. It was clear we had a bag problem. My department was tasked to reduce plastic bag consumption. We needed to come up with ways to change human behavior. So we asked ourselves,
would you like a bag?
What do people really hate?
Yep.
Getting punched in the stomach. Preliminary studies showed that the consequences weren't severe enough to warrant behavioral change.
Actually, can I get that double bagged?
So we thought, what do people hate more than getting punched in the stomach? Kissing Helga.
Hey, big boy.
People didn't find her so offensive after all, so we had to get creative.
How many bags? Okay, now pour this ice water down.
We tried everything.
Eat the threat. Defuse this bomb.
Even fighting your clone. After blowing through millions of dollars of government funds on research, I came up with a brilliant idea.
Why don't we just charge 5 cents per bag?
That's a stupid idea.
Would you like a bag?
Yes.
5 cents a bag.
5 cents? 5 cents? Do I still have the option of getting punched?
Honestly, I don't know how everyone else missed it.
Why don't you just get a reusable bag?
This is the Bill Press Show.
Oh, poor President Obama. He had such a big day Saturday. He played a round of golf and then had the big White House Correspondents' Dinner. I don't know what he did yesterday, but today he's doing nothing. At least there's nothing on his schedule today except the daily briefing, which he will get with the Vice President at 10 o'clock. And then the Vice President goes over to the Justice Department to swear in Loretta Lynch as the next Attorney General of the United States. Today will be her first day on the job. Josh Earnest summoning us White House reporters to 12:30 briefing at the White House. We'll be back with
the
Judith
Bill
Miller.
Press Show.
West here reporting from Houston, Texas for Climate Desk. Now, one of the biggest uncertainties in climate science right now is the role of clouds. What better way to work that part out than flying right through them? That's what NASA scientists aboard this airplane think. Welcome to NASA's biggest airborne laboratory. You're coming with us today on an 8-hour NASA flight mission.
When you read these big IPCC climate assessments, what's the biggest uncertainty? There's two, right? The role of aerosols and clouds. Clouds is probably bigger than aerosols.
That is a piece of a puzzle that right now we are missing.
You can't get the models right if you don't understand the chemistry and the process.
Now we're being told we've got to get on. The doors are about to shut, so let's go aboard. Every time you turn on the weather, every time you hear a climate change prediction, that information has to come from somewhere. And it starts by getting sucked out of the air from planes like this.
So this mission is to try to understand the emissions from the surface, so mostly biogenic emissions, so from trees and other plants.
Right now we're flying to our very first part of this experiment on the DC-8. Over Arkansas, there's a particularly pungent bouquet of emissions that scientists are interested in measuring.
Well, these emissions lead to both aerosols and to molecules that both destroy and create ozone. So these are very important things to understand for climate studies.
How it will manifest itself, it will be in more accurate and more reliable predictions.
So what we're doing is taking a series of flyovers each at a different level of the atmosphere, scooping up those emissions, testing them, and hopefully scientists are going to see exactly what's in this column of air all the way up.
The data that we collect in one flight can keep busy 60 scientists and students for 3 years, 4 years. We're still studying data from data collected 20 years ago.
In fact, this particular mission today is its most heavily equipped in its nearly 30 years of service. Each one of these consoles here is a specially equipped scientific instrument designed to collect all sorts of different data in real time.
And this instrument here tracks the sun.
We're looking at mist chambers. They're used to strip soluble gases.
This black line is the CO2. It's about 390 ppm right now.
We're putting these filters in the bags that we've got the aerosols that we trapped out of a certain amount of air. And so we're sampling up here about 150 liters a minute.
That ultimately flows back into the operational models. It flows back into what goes on TV every day.
Anyway, I got to get this sample going. You do it. It's a busy man at work. We can't let him rest. Well, get this. We've just spent 2 hours crisscrossing this one cloud formation. In, back out again, back in again.
Then they grow, and we track them as long as we can, and then we let it go.
Even one cloud can hold a host of answers to the mysteries of climate change.
The patterns of, where the clouds are, what type of clouds we see, what kind of weather systems they're associated with it, that'll all be shifting in a shifting climate, in a world with climate change.
Then the big spark is this, is when we actually get the meat on the grill. And then it will be some time to process it.
The most important issue on this planet right now is to protect and conserve biodiversity in the world's oceans. And I don't think people realize just how intimate our connection is with the oceans themselves. Not only do they provide the very foundation of life and control our weather, but life just simply could not exist without a healthy ocean. The real problem, though, is apathy. It's all out of sight. It's all out of mind, and people don't even think about it. But it doesn't matter whether you live in Peoria or on the coast. The fact is, whatever happens in the ocean affects all life forms on the planet Earth. If the oceans die, then civilization collapses. We all die. We cannot live on this planet without the oceans. This is, in fact, not the planet Earth. It's the planet ocean, but because we're a land-dwelling species, we refer to it as Earth. But it is the planet ocean, and the oceans are the heart and the foundation of all life on the planet.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies. In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
2 anti-government, self-described revolutionaries have shot up a pizza restaurant as well as a Walmart in Las Vegas.
The internationally syndicated political series, The David Pakman Show, provides progressive talk, analysis, and interviews with the nation's youngest radio and television host, David Pakman. Find out more and catch up on all the latest episodes by visiting our website at freespeech.org.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Just 3 hours from now, Vice President Joe Biden will swear in Loretta Lynch as the next Attorney General of the United States. Her first day on the job. Congratulations, General Lynch. Glad to see you take over, finally. Hello, everybody. What do you say? It's Monday, April 27. Good to see you today. Hope you had a great weekend and are ready to dive into the big new week here with lots to talk about. Starting with this just devastating earthquake in Nepal. The death toll now over 3,700. Still counting, of course. That's going to grow because they're still digging people and bodies out of the rubble, with aftershocks impeding the rescue effort. And relief on the way from other nations, but boy, it's going to be a long time before that country is able to rebuild and the people can even get any comfort that they're willing to go back inside of their homes. Here in Washington, D.C., as I mentioned, Loretta Lynch will be sworn in today. The battle over TPP is heating up. We'll talk about that here at the top of the hour. And Washington sort of in a recovery hangover mood today after the long weekend celebrating and with the White House Correspondents' Dinner and all the events and parties before and after. We've got it all covered. We'll tell you what's going on. You tell us what you think about it all at 866-55-PRESS. Send us your comments on Twitter at BP Show and on Facebook at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. With Peter Ogburn and Elisa Murphy here, Team Press is underway.
Yo.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning indeed.
How you doing?
Alicia Cruz is here to take your calls at 866-55-PRESS. We are here with you not only on your local progressive talk radio station nationwide, coast to coast. We are here with you on Free Speech TV nationwide and worldwide on our video stream, TawkrTV. And on Free Speech TV and TawkrTV, we're looking at you thanks to our good videographer, Cyprian Bolding, who is on the job. Yes, indeed. I mentioned the White House Correspondents' Dinner. You know, the tradition always is that the President of the United States speaks, and followed by a stand-up comic. And the stand-up comic is always overshadowed by the President of the United States, who not only has great material, but delivers it in fine style. President Obama, for example, he had many, many great lines. He talked about the fact that, among other things, it's tough being President of the United States, right?
Being president is never easy. I still have to fix a broken immigration system, issue veto threats, negotiate with Iran, all while finding time to pray 5 times a day.
All of that poking at the people, fun at the people who still insist that he's a Muslim. It's not only tough on him being president. He said, he acknowledged these are tough times for a lot of Americans, like this person.
For many Americans, this is still a time of deep uncertainty. For example, I have one friend. Just a few weeks ago, she was making millions of dollars a year, and she's now living out of a van in Iowa.
It was funny the first time, funny to rehear it. Yes, indeed. Lots coming up here. We're going to start off this hour with Judith Miller, a former New York Times reporter and now a Fox News contributor, who's got a new book out called The Story, A Reporter's Journey. We'll talk to Judith Miller in just a second. But first, Peter.
This is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. To Japan we go, where their space agency announced that this week the country is planning on putting an unmanned rover on the surface of the moon by 2018. This is a big step for the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, or JAXA.
I didn't know they had a space program.
Neither did I. They do, and it's real, and they said that they're going to land an unmanned rover on the moon in 3 years. So good luck to Japan.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see them on Mars.
Yeah, right.
That's where we're
exactly.
headed.
We're lapping them. To Waterloo, Iowa, we go, where the Isle Hotel Casino. Shut up.
Uh-oh.
Shut up. I can read for crying out loud. Isle.
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 You're thinking-
ISLE. The Isle Hotel Casino.
Yes.
A 90-year-old grandmother went by the penny slots, put in a penny, pulled the lever, and hit a $41 million jackpot.
Wow.
Or so she thought.
There
was a software glitch that says that she won $41.8 million. It turns out that because of the software glitch, she is not entitled to any of that money. She is entitled to $1.85.
That's a big difference.
And
that's rough.
And that's what she won. She actually took them to court because they said, sorry, you don't actually get this. There's a problem with the machine. And she said, no way. It says I get this money. Took them to court, and she unfortunately lost. Rough break.
Too bad, Grandma.
Yeah. To the NBA we go, where over the weekend we saw a couple of teams move on out of the first round, including the Golden State Warriors, who swept the Pelicans of New Orleans to move on. That was on Saturday. Yesterday, the Cavaliers swept the Celtics, although they lost Kevin Love for at least the rest of the game, and probably J.R. Smith for one game for a suspension for backhanding another player. The Wizards, by the way, swept the Toronto Raptors. They are moving on. 4-game sweep. The Clippers beat the Spurs yesterday, and the Mavericks avoided a sweep against the Rockets, where they beat them in Game 4.
All right, go Wizards. They certainly look better than the Nats these days. Yes, indeed. 13 minutes now after the hour. She has a new book out called The Story, A Reporter's Journey. She is probably at once one of the most reviled and yet one of the most revered journalists in this country. Reviled because some of the stories that she wrote for the New York Times turned out not to be about weapons of mass destruction leading up to the war in Iraq turned out not to be true. And revered because on another issue, she refused, as any good reporter would, to reveal her sources and was willing to serve time in prison rather than reveal her sources. And I'm talking about a good friend, Judith Miller, who is former New York Times reporter and now a contributor to Fox News. You see her often on Fox and Friends in the morning. Hi, Judy. Good to talk to you.
Morning. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. You know, you admit that some of the reporting about the weapons of mass destruction, the stuff you report, turned out not to be true. How did you get it wrong?
Well, I think what I've done in this book is try and remind people that everybody got it wrong.
Yep.
Because that's what the intelligence was showing. I mean, George Bush and Dick Cheney, no matter what you think of them, were depending on the assessment of the intelligence community that 16 agencies paid billions of dollars of our tax dollars to make assessments in this very tough area. I mean, this is really, really hard work because obviously people we follow in North Korea, in Iran, in Pakistan, and in Iraq don't want you to know what they're doing. Plus, we had Saddam, who was one of the great monsters of the world, who wanted people to think that he had actually kept what he told the UN he had destroyed because he didn't want his enemies, Iran and Israel, to think that he was weak. So you have what you call the kind of intelligence problem from hell. And they got it wrong. And so I go back and I retrace how it was that the intelligence community basically gave the president and his vice president information that ultimately led us to war.
And was the president, or particularly the vice president, choosing or cherry-picking, as the phrase was at the time, the intelligence he wanted to depend on and ignoring some of the others that raised doubts about the weapons of mass destruction?
Well, I'm not even sure that he ever heard about the doubts because they were mostly buried in footnotes, or they were, debates that the intelligence analysts have all the time within the intelligence community that didn't quite register into what was given, justified and given to the press as key findings. But I have to remind you that these intelligence assessments came to the president and his leadership with high confidence. confidence that Saddam had biological and chemical weapons, and high and moderate confidence that he didn't yet have a nuclear bomb. So, I think we have to kind of take ourselves back to that period after 9/11 when Dick Gephardt, the House Majority Leader, told me that he was seeing the intelligence that the president was seeing, or some of it, because he was in leadership, and he said it was so scary. It was even scarier than a lot of what was ultimately released. So if you put, 9/11 plus the anthrax attacks on top of that, President Bush and Dick Cheney have both written in their own memoirs that they were determined to do whatever it takes to keep the country safe after two terrible terrorist events like that.
Well, on that point, Raymond Bonner on Politico wrote a column I saw last week saying that we all owe Americans an apology for some of the reporting after 9/11, because we all let our guard down, is a phrase that he uses.
I love Ray, but I got to tell you, I really disagree with that. I mean, I was very, very skeptical, and I did the very best I could. I take readers inside my effort to kind of track some of these guys down, standing outside of their houses, pacing up and down waiting for them to come home for work. And they telling me to go away. I mean, what I'm trying to do is to give readers a sense of how hard it is to get this information, and then I go back in the book to some of these same people who either gave me bad information or got it wrong themselves, or just said subsequently that they had doubts, and I said, why didn't you talk to me? Or why did you talk to me and get it wrong? Yeah. So it's an effort, it's a detective story, kind of.
Do you think that do you ever have the feeling now or then that you were being used by people in administration to get false information out?
Look, administration officials, politicians lie, right? They spin. That's what they do. Yeah. But in this instance, I have to tell you, these were the very same people who had steered me in the direction of Osama bin Laden. And, before 9/11, I had helped lead a 2-year investigation into Al-Qaeda, what became known as Al-Qaeda. And they said, we really think this guy is being underestimated by policymakers. And these are the same people who warned me that biological weapons made us really vulnerable. They had never been wrong. So I had absolutely no reason not to believe them. And moreover, I tried to check things in every way that I could. I went to international inspectors. Most of my stories, contrary to what was written about me, had very few anonymous sources. Most of them were contained individuals who are willing to be quoted by name. So, you find me the people who really had doubts about taking the country to war, and I'll show you that they were mostly quoted, and if not, my stories, other people's stories. I don't get this, we didn't do our jobs well. That we did them as well as we could do them, and whenever I got contradictory information, I went back and I put it in the paper. Every time.
Judith Miller, our guest, she is her new book out, The Story, A Reporter's Journey. You can get that, of course, at all your local bookstore, Amazon.com and the other sources, and we'll have a link up on our website as well. But Judith, you had your own prior experience with Saddam Hussein reporting in Iraq, correct?
Right.
Which I'm sure colored your stories as well.
Well, of course. I mean, if you cover a guy since he's come to power, and my first trip to Iraq was in 1976, just as he was beginning to kind of rise up through the ranks. And you see what he had terrorized and brutalized his own people. He had actually used chemical weapons against his own people. And I covered the kind of mass graves in the situation in Halabja where he had killed several thousand people, just frozen. They're frozen in times you die instantly with that. And it was absolutely horrible. But, my region, the Middle East, is just the region I worked in most of my life, is filled with horrible people. That doesn't mean you go to war against all of them. But this combination of kind of possessing that capability, or so we thought, and being willing to use it against your own people, and having 17 UN resolutions brought against you saying, you're still not cooperating and you're still not honoring the pledges you made, I think that more or less most people that I covered at that point thought that any president, one way or another, would have tried to finally resolve the Saddam problem after 9/11. 9/11 was really crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. Colored us all. Judith Miller, congratulations on telling your story and the story, A Reporter's Journey. Good to talk to you again. It's been a while since we've seen each other, but I'm so happy for your grateful for your taking the time this morning.
Thank you so much. Good to talk to you.
All right. Thanks, Judy. We'll have a link up for the story, A Reporter's Journey, on our website.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job, and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand, and they don't get it, and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university? And,
yeah, people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies. In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
This is the Bill Press Show.
How about it? 26 minutes after the hour here. It is Monday, April 27. Susan Swain from C-SPAN will be along in the next for the next half hour. A great new book out about first ladies of the United States, all the way from Martha to Michelle. And looking forward to hearing more about the impact that they have made. We have talked this morning a little bit about the White House Correspondents' Dinner. This was our Nerd Prom weekend, of course. The parties before, the parties after, the parties the next day, the dinner itself. So far, we've been talking about President Obama, who did a great job. He always does. He's a born stand-up comic. But we haven't gotten so far a chance to talk about Cecily Strong from Saturday Night Live. It's always tough following the President of the United States, but I thought she did a great job. She was really very, very, very funny, very loose. Talking, for example, President made a little bit of fun about his age. So did she.
Your hair is so white now, it can talk back to the police.
I know, very pointed. And she had something to say about sitting alongside of the First Lady as well.
Michelle Obama, what an amazing woman. A Harvard-educated lawyer, a fierce advocate for LGBT rights, and the founder of the Let's Move campaign to combat childhood obesity. It is a dream to sit next to you, but it's a nightmare to eat next to you.
On the plate was a piece of steak.
Yeah.
I'm sure Michelle said, get rid of that steak. Don't eat that steak. There's a piece of fish there as well. Maybe Cecily Strong's strongest part of her program, presentation came at the very beginning when she said, quote, "It is great to be here at the Washington Hilton." That sounds like something a prostitute might say to a congressman.
Oh, man.
And then she said when the president arrived at the Hilton and he saw all the bellhops, he thought, finally some decent security.
Oh, my goodness.
A little slam at the Secret Service. The quote of hers that is getting made most widely circulated is when she said that in the next administration, our relationship with Israel will improve just as soon as Israel makes a generous contribution to the Clinton Foundation.
Oh,
geez. Right on target. Susan Swain from C-SPAN joins us next on the First Lady.
This is the Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
Eye cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing dot, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
33 minutes after the hour now. Here we are on a Monday morning, April 27. So good to see you today. Thank you for joining us. It's The Bill Press Show, coming to you live from our nation's capital and our studio right here on Capitol Hill. And brought to you today by the American Federation of Teachers, the good men and women teachers of America under President Randy Weingarten. Doing a great job making a difference in our classrooms every day, you bet. You can find out more about their good work at aft.org. Randy Weingarten, a very powerful labor leader and a great female leader, political leader of this country. Speaking of very famous political women in this country, you know, C-SPAN not so long ago did a year-long series on the First Ladies of the United States, hosted by Susan Swain. She has put it all together in a great new book called First Ladies, of course, Presidential Historians on the Lives of 45 Iconic American Women. Susan Swain in studio with us this morning. Susan, so good to see you.
Bill, I'm smiling because your listeners should know that you have been a great friend of C-SPAN for many years, and it's fun to be on your home turf this morning.
Well, thank you. I was going to say, I've been in your studio so many times. It's nice to have somebody from C-SPAN here. And, of course, we know that you came by yourself this morning because Brian Lamb never gets up this early, right?
That's right.
So
actually, it's lunchtime for Brian Lamb right now. He's a 3:30 in the morning guy.
Sadly, it is. That's why I hate having lunch with Brian, because you have to do it like at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Right. Dinner at 4. he's a load of fun.
Well, congratulations on First Lady. When did the job of First Lady, or was it always something more than just being the wife of the president?
It was always. Martha Washington, of course, understood everything that she did, everything she and General Washington did, and we're going to set precedents that would be lasting for generations. So very cognizant of working in the ideas of a new republic into how they would be called, the fact that they would open the executive mansion to weekly public visits, really important precedent-taking steps. And she even had special projects. She was very much involved with the soldiers who had worked for, fought for the country, and she was considered their mother throughout their lives.
Well, I was going to ask you that because we know First Ladies now have these special projects. Obviously, Let's Move, right, is Michelle Obama's special project. And first ladies always did from the beginning?
Most of the first ladies understood that by being in this role, they had an opportunity to do good, to do things that mattered to them. It became formalized right around, I guess, around the Kennedy administration and onward. And now there's this great anticipation. What will the First Lady's project be? And there's all this political calculation. And will it help the president's program? So it's become much more formalized now. But most of the women in the job have used it to the benefit of the country or to their husband's legacy.
Right. And notice all women in the job so far.
Right.
We'll talk about that in a little bit. But, you know, when you think about first ladies, just got the book, haven't had a chance to read it through yet, but the names, we think of activist first ladies maybe, or the first ladies with a higher profile, Eleanor Roosevelt, Jackie Kennedy, Martha Washington, right?
Well, sure. I mean,
who are some of the others that were...
Well, I'll tell you what the trajectory.
Hillary
Clinton, of course, and she is she's not really a precedent setter. She's a mold breaker, as was Eleanor Roosevelt, and it's likely that they both will not change the course of history in terms of how first ladies approach the job because they're just so different. Few will run for office afterwards, and of course, Eleanor didn't have the opportunity. Women didn't have that possibility really in her days, but she stayed so active with the United Nations. But one of the interesting things in doing this project is watching the trajectory of women in American society. The very early women were revolutionaries alongside their husbands, and they fought hard and very publicly. Abigail Adams, Dolly Madison. But then as the country became prosperous, then women went into this more domesticated role and expected to be in it and couldn't be written about by the press, couldn't be in public situations. And then, of course, in the 20th century, they began to be more public. So it's interesting to see how women in society changed, even these women at the highest echelons of society.
So the role of the First Lady has changed as we have changed
Yes.
as a country.
That's right.
Did any of them really hate the public eye and try to avoid as much as they could?
Sure. Yeah, who wouldn't if you think about it? I mean, the constant scrutiny. And the women have the spouses, and as you said, all women have really the tougher job because, first of all, in most cases, they're not the politician. They're along to support the husband that they love. But on top of it all, they usually have to keep the family in some sort of a normal, sane role. And so protecting the family is really important to them. They bear the brunt of that. There have been, the last one to really want to live a private life was Bess Truman. And she's really the last one to have done it successfully. She had, when she was thrust into the role after the death of FDR, Eleanor Roosevelt nicely scheduled a press conference for her immediately, and she canceled it because she didn't want to stand in front of the press. She had an early public event that went terribly.
Oh, wow.
Broke a champagne bottle in front of an aircraft that wouldn't break, and it turned into a newsreel footage that was sent across the nation. She wouldn't do any more after that.
Oh, wow.
You can't blame her.
You can't blame her. Mortification in public,
Now, one First Lady actually was president, really, unofficially, I guess, Edith Wilson.
Edith Wilson, yes. She had the unfortunate situation marrying the president. She was Edith Galt of Galt Jewelers for the Washington people who remember that name.
Go. Yeah.
And shortly after the president's first wife died in the White House, he was really in terrible depression, and the war was coming on. His doctor, his children were all concerned about him and his doctor introduced him to Edith Galt, and they married pretty quickly. I'll tell you a funny story about that, because you think about how Washington has changed. The president used to walk to her house for dates, and I don't know if he stayed the night, didn't ask, didn't find that research, but the Secret Service...
What? You didn't...
Come on.
I didn't get to the good
what
stuff.
What kind of a reporter are you? I mean, that's right.
The Secret Service... that as he walked back to the White House after the dates, he'd be skipping and humming. He was so happy. But shortly after she married him and the war was raging around him, as he was pushing for the peace process, he had a major stroke and was incapacitated, and she carried on the government by allowing access to what he saw and what he didn't see. And that's one of those roles that should never happen again in the role of First Lady.
Right. Or wouldn't happen today, I guess, right?
Well, you couldn't hide something like that, of course. It was a different time. But also the fact that she was complicit in the cover-up was really not a great spot in the history of First Ladies.
How's the press treat First Ladies?
Well, it's changed over time as well. In the Victorian age, never covered it, and so those ladies are a little bit more difficult to write about if they didn't leave their own footprints in history. But starting with Frances Cleveland, our first celebrity first lady, she was 21 and married Grover Cleveland in the White House.
In the White House, right.
And the press went wild for her, and it's really been a celebrity status position more or less ever since.
He's the only president to be married in the White House, isn't he?
He is.
In the Blue Room, I believe.
And
right?
also the only non-sequential president. Now, when they lost the election, she said to the staff in the White House, "Don't change the drapery. I'll be back in 4 years." She was. She knew how powerful the politics were in that family.
But do the press, give them like a pass? Is it generally considered that they just get positive treatment if they're first lady?
No, really. Think about Michelle Obama. Does she get a pass when she? No. In fact, the spotlight has become very bright from the time they enter into the campaign. That's one of the fun things.
And Hillary didn't get a pass for sure.
Well, right. And even if you think about Laura Bush, she created a comfortable persona that was palatable to the press.
Mm-hmm.
Her own political views are much more nuanced than the character we saw. But we learn that the first ladies learn to do this so they can survive the scrutiny.
So the term first lady, if we have a woman president, and we will, when we do, is the term first lady going to disappear?
I don't think so. I think what the reference seems to be right now is first gentleman.
I was going to say,
which is really awkward, huh? It's awkward.
Yeah, I don't like
first
that.
Spouse, first man,
That's
first
what I mean.
dude.
Not first lady for sure. But,
Yeah.
I don't know where we.
Uncharted territory. How fun is that?
It is. So what happens to that title? Just, I guess.
Well, there have been daughters that have done the social side, and the last one actually was the Wilson daughters. In the period of time after their mother's death, they took on the social role, so they acted as first ladies for that year or so. And we haven't had this little footnote to history for a while. In the earlier days, there were some first ladies who were ill and turned it over to their daughters. But this is going to be fun. The presumption is if the Clintons win the White House, if Mrs. Clinton is elected, that there'll be all kinds of questions about the role of the first spouse, and that likely Chelsea will do the social side of the job.
Now, there's no there are no constitutional responsibilities for the first lady or first spouse or whatever.
None.
Right? It's all invented. Has been invented as we've gone along,
right.
And each first spouse, first lady, gets to define the job, I guess, as she sees it.
They do, and we talked to Michelle Obama for this series, and she said the only way that she could survive in the role is to try to maintain some of herself as she went through it. What they have developed over time is their own staff. And they have press staff, scheduling staff, all sorts of the full accoutrement. And as when we asked Laura Bush whether or not First Lady should be paid for the job, because it is a 24/7 sort of role, she said we get an awful lot of nice perks attached to this. And I wouldn't want to see that debate in the country about whether or not we should pay them. But the real question is, have we reached a time in society, whether it's a first gentleman or a first lady, that they can have their own jobs while their spouse is serving? That's an interesting question.
No, it is. That was going through my mind why not?
Well, conflict of interest is one answer. Why not? So it would have to be the perfect job. But in other countries, Angela Merkel's spouse works still. And I was thinking back to Tony Blair. His wife was working as a lawyer while he was in office. So other countries managed to do it. We put so much focus and have so many expectations on the role in this country. It's a little tougher to negotiate. But Jill Biden works. We can do it with the second lady, as we call her. Why not the first?
Why not? Susan Swain here. All kinds of interesting stuff here. It's fascinating. First Ladies is the latest book out of C-SPAN, thanks to Susan Swain. You can get it, of course, on Amazon.com places, and we'll have a link up on our website. Your questions or comments for Susan about any of the First Ladies, your favorite or your least favorite, give us a call at 866-55-PRESS. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found on the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies.
In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer. Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
12 minutes before the top of the hour on a Monday, April 27, looking at the role, the very kind of changing role, an important role of First Ladies of the United States, all put together in this great new book, First Ladies, from C-SPAN. Author Susan Swain in studio with us. Susan Swain, big part of C-SPAN's coverage and on many fronts. You used to get up early to do that Washington Journal, Susan, so you know what it's like these hours.
We were commiserating about that alarm clock going off so early. I particularly like, because I don't have a garage, scraping my windshield in the morning at 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. It's fun. You wake up the whole neighborhood with reverberations off the buildings.
That's so true.
Who was the most controversial First Lady?
Eleanor Roosevelt. She had 18 recorded death threats against her. Well, not just when she was in the role, but also when she continued her work afterwards with the United Nations and with civil rights issues. But yeah, she often appears now in surveys as the most respected First Lady. But in her time, highly controversial, because in the mix of everyday politics, the positions they were putting forward, certainly on civil rights issues, she was ahead of FDR on many of them.
Yeah,
and it was very controversial in the day.
And she played a major role, along with FDR, in persuading Americans the need to...
Yeah, she was a great supporter of the troops. She traveled thousands of miles by air to be able to... Her arches in her feet fell, and she was in pain with her feet for the rest of her life as a result of that.
Wow. I recently read a book by Clint Hill, famed Secret Service agent, about who was the lead agent working with Jackie Kennedy.
That's right. I read it too.
Yeah, she made a big difference as First Lady in many different ways, in terms of like traveling and doing a lot of stuff on her own, redecorating the White House.
Right. Redecorating the White House sounds like it's women's work. And what she did was turn the White House into a very credible, respected, and beautiful museum history, and set up the White House Historical Association so that future didn't decide to do restoration hardware if they understand the symbolism of the bill. Another thing, when you think about Jacqueline Kennedy, think about how young she was during the assassination. History to Lincoln's funeral, which we are marking right now. It's being recreated this month as we speak. And she went back to look at the ceremony that was held during that time and incorporated those symbolic elements into JFK's funeral to help the nation mourn and to get through that tragedy.
Now, how do you assess Michelle Obama as First Lady, impact that she's had?
Well, impact, I think, is a question for history.
Right.
But what's been interesting with Michelle Obama is to think about during the campaign how she went out and learned lessons the painful way when she said some things that were very controversial, most famously being proud of America. And what that she did was regroup. And she really took off the rough edges, more or less. She became that person who supports the husband without creating more controversy. And you can watch how that whole process developed with her. She took on a campaign with obesity that's not uncontroversial because the soda manufacturers, the food manufacturers all have something to say about it. But she's persisted quietly and made progress where she can with it and has not really gone out on a limb. She declared herself famously first mom in chief, and she really worked with Laura Bush's staff and when she came into the office to learn how to run the office in the mode of Laura Bush, which was quiet effectiveness, as opposed to Hillary Clinton, the predecessor, who really was very involved in policy and very controversial.
Right. Now, I've been to events with the First Lady where for getting jobs for veterans, helping persuading corporations to hire veterans is a big cause of hers and of Jill Biden's as well. The whole let's move, the healthy eating, exercise, the thing that she's really made her own signature.
The impressive thing about Michelle Obama is that she's not a natural politician. She had to be convinced when Barack Obama wanted to run for public office. He went to her brother and said, talk to her, tell her it's going to be okay. And she agreed, and then when she agreed, she jumped into it with both feet. But this is not her chosen role in life, and she's really learned how to do it well. And
boy, she has. She certainly adapted to it as well.
Great speaker.
Fascinating stuff, and that's just there. So 45 great stories like that here in First Ladies. Thanks, Susan, for doing this, and thanks for coming in this morning.
Nice to be with you.
Great to see you. Hello to all of our good friends at C-SPAN.
I'll take it back.
All right, thanks. I'll be back with a quick parting shot.
This is the Bill Press Show.
It is possible to read the history of this country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. In other words, who, according to our laws and culture, gets to be considered a person? The law creates legal personhood, and movements create law and change culture. So, how have the courts passed laws to shape our culture? That history goes way back before Citizens United. 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, Supreme Court case, turned a corporate charter from a government-granted charter to a contract. This ruling gave corporations standing within the Constitution. 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Though the court did not rule on corporate personhood, the decision was subsequently cited as a precedent to hold that a private corporation is entitled to the same 14th Amendment rights of due process and equal protection as human beings. This makes it impossible for us to make laws that treat local businesses any differently than giant multinational corporations, even if their business practices are deemed to be harmful to workers, the environment and communities, or if they have a history of violating the law. Hale versus Henkel, 1906. The court granted corporations the Fourth Amendment search and seizure protection. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Supreme Court says the business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. Stockholder primacy is established. The purpose of the corporation, according to the court, is no longer to serve the public good, as it had been. It is now to maximize profit for shareholders above all else. Pennsylvania Coal Company versus Mahon, 1922. Corporations get the Fifth Amendment takings clause, meaning if you pass a regulation that impacts a corporation's ability to make a profit, that is deemed a taking, and they can sue for the right to future profits lost. This creates a chilling effect, and local and state governments become much more hesitant to pass laws in the public interest for fear that corporations can claim loss of potential profits that cities and states will be on the hook to pay. Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976.
Chief Justice John Roberts declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
The court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people.
The Parting Shot with Bill Press. This is the Bill Press Show.
Well, as you may have heard, this is a busy weekend in Washington with the what we call the Nerd Prom, or the White House Correspondents. Washington players can forget their differences and just have a good time together, which is not a bad thing to do. One final note, there were about 3,000 people in the ballroom Saturday night, but only 3 labor union presidents. Jim Hoffa of the Teamsters, Tom Buffenbarger of the Machinists, and Randy Weingarten of the American Federation of Teachers. All 3 of them were guests of the Bill Press Show, for which I am very proud. Hey, that's it for today, folks. Thanks for joining us. Thanks again to Susan Swain. We'll see you all again tomorrow morning. We'll be looking for you.
This is the Bill Press Show.